This was my garden in 2021 when I took the leap of faith and decided to turn my entire backyard into wonderful flower gardens all at the same time. This was my garden thriving in 2022. This was my garden in 2023 looking the worst that it's looked since that project began. And this was my garden this past year looking better rehabilitated from the woes of 2023, but still not up to par to where I want it to be. This is not for lack of effort. In fact, I spent perhaps the most effort working in my garden this last year than I have in a long, long time. But in some senses, that's exactly the problem. I currently have a situation where I need to be working constantly in the garden to maintain it, and that needs to change. This is for many reasons: pests, diseases, water problems, bad soil, weeds. Weeds are a huge one. No matter the reason, it's helpful to take inventory of why things went so bad and make some actionable steps to improve on it. And for me, I think it was for three reasons: the deer, the weeds, and the overall maintenance that the garden requires. What are your reasons? For me, the deer have been a total menace, and they have forced me to be making two changes in particular: to redo my front gardens to make them more deer resistant, and to enclose the backyard. We've always had deer in our neighborhood, but lately it seems as if the population of the deer has obviously boomed. Whereas before I'd see one deer here and there, it's now possible for me to see 10 to 15 deer at a time. The front garden beds, it's full of things that deer love, like things like hostas, macrophylla hydrangeas, because up until now it was a shaded garden, though it faces west. There's a maple tree that shades, or it used to shade the front of the house, but it's died. And so this means that this one shaded garden bed gets now full afternoon sun. I would have needed to convert it to being a sunny garden anyway. So now I'm just going to make sure to include, well, to replace the plants with deer resistant plants. So I'll be replacing the hostas with catmint and the hydrangeas with reblooming lilacs. Lilacs are supposed to be deer resistant, and that's true. I'll be curious to see if this particular brand of lilac is resistant to our particular deer. I have already planted a hedge of boxwoods there to formalize it, and I'll be adding lots of bulbs like daffodils and hyacinths, which are all deer resistant. So that's nice. And then I have a very front circle flower bed closest to the road, and that has lavender, russet sage, and boxwoods, all of which the deer hate. So I'm pretty excited about keeping that the way it is. The second thing that I'm doing to deal with the deer is to enclose the backyard to protect it from the deer. I don't want to be relegated to a gardening life of just planting plants that the deer won't eat. Okay, I do understand that that's what some people have to do, but I love flowers too much to not grow roses and hydrangeas and hostas because the deer love them. And so my solution is to enclose the backyard. This past spring, there were 3 fawns born to the property on my right and another born to the property on my left. There aren't any meaningful fences between the properties, and so my garden became everybody's buffet. The fawns and their moms would frequent my garden every single day. And you know something? While the deer of the past munched on a thing here and there, the deer of today pretty much eat everything. They eat the normal hostas and roses and hydrangeas, but they also eat things like echinaceas, black-eyed Susans, coral bells, and even young Japanese maple. I didn't even know deer ate those things. So the plan is to do this kind of soon because my winter garden wasn't immune to the deer. In fact, it was kind of worse. In the winter, they came and ate like all my emerald green arborvitaes. They ate my azaleas. I was pretty sad about this. We've tried everything to deter them, by the way. We've tried the sprays. At this point, we just need a fence. Dealing with your pest problem is so crucial to having a thriving garden that prioritizing this will likely improve your garden's look by large magnitudes. So for you, I don't know, it may be rabbits or thrips or groundhogs, but whatever it may be, just come up with a plan. Third thing I want to do to improve my garden is to continue my efforts to lessen the maintenance of the garden. Isn't that all of our dreams? A low maintenance garden? But really, who's got time to be pulling weeds all the time? So this is a lesson I learned from my 2023 garden when we did that septic work. It wasn't only, like, that septic work wasn't the only hindrance. In 2023, I was terribly sick for the first quarter, pregnancy woes. I was hugely pregnant the second quarter and decidedly preoccupied with a teeny tiny newborn the third quarter. The weeds, as you can imagine, quickly got away from me. That same year, in 2023, it was weird. A sort of unrelenting drought hit our area at the heat of the summer right after I gave birth. I simply could not get out and provide supplemental water for the flower garden. We do have irrigation, praise the Lord, that goes to our vegetable garden because it sits under a large oak tree, so it tends to dry out pretty quickly under there. But the rest of the yard doesn't have irrigation because we don't need it. We typically get plenty of rainfall here to keep the plants happy. But this drought went on, and our red clay got drier and drier. Many of the plants died, and a lot of them just suffered. And the ones that survived, evidently enough, was things like Bermuda grass. That's a terrible weed that quickly took over the perennials. But I did notice that the shrubs, on the other hand, still managed to stand proud against the weeds, and they were able to withstand the drought better too. I've already started doing this. This upcoming garden year, I'll be replacing many of the perennials with shrubs. Not all of them. I love perennials, but some because I need to get the balance better. So I don't know what maintenance looks like for you, but whatever it is, lessening it is time back on your life to grow your garden better or to simply enjoy a cup of tea in your garden without needing to pull weeds. The fourth thing I'd like to do to make the garden better is to attempt to eliminate that Bermuda grass in the worst beds. While cutting back on perennials is a fine enough plan, right? That's good. But much like I don't want to let the deer dictate what I can or can't plant in my garden, I don't want the weeds to dictate what I can't or can't plant as far as perennials. I have to solve the weed problem itself, and by far my most aggressive weed is Bermuda grass. I've talked about this in another video. Bermuda grass is a grass that grows quickly and sends down networks of roots underground. It's extremely hard to get rid of despite my best weeding efforts. It almost always takes over two of my garden beds in particular by the end of summer. I'll be laying down the thickest possible landscape fabric, if not plastic altogether, to try to get control back over those beds and attempt to try to choke it out. What's your most terrible weed? Any extreme measures that you can take to fight it better? Extreme measures for the worst of the worst, of course. The fifth thing I'll be doing to make the garden better is to kill the trumpet vine. This plant is in line with the last problem because it's a weed, but it's different because this one is sort of isolated from the rest of my gardens. It's in the very back corner of the property, though it's quickly making its way forward. And it's in a different category in my brain because I kind of like this plant in theory. If it remained contained, I'd let it be. It has lovely orange flowers that the butterflies love and the hummingbirds too. And the flowers are kind of fun for kids. They make a nice little popping sound if you hit them a specific way between your hands. It's a lovely little plant, but it most definitely does not stay put. It spreads way too easily, and as of late, it's jumped to my vegetable garden, and that was the last straw. I will be applying the strongest herbicide that I can to it during the growing season next year. And you know something? I've yet to use any herbicides in my garden, but one's got to start somewhere. Do you have any plants like this? Plants that you desperately want to love, but they likely do more harm than good? It might be worth it to get rid of them for the greater good of the rest of your garden. If you want to know more about creating a pretty flower cottage garden and designing it in such a way that serves your family, I recommend you watch this video where I share another tip with you for how to create or curate a space on your property that will serve your family very, very well.